Good afternoon. Thank you. So I'm now going to gauge how far away I can stand from this and not make it pop so you guys don't want me to stop. Welcome to the 2015 Community Day at the, I knew I was going to do this, at the Robert J. Jones Urban Research Outreach and Engagement Center. Today, we honor a very important history, even if it is a bit of a short one, at least in terms of when the doors opened. But that history represents more than the 5 years since the grand opening of UROC. It represents a time that the university and the Northside community and the city and many other people invested themselves into saying, can we collaborate? Can we make something that we want to be supportive of our urban community? And that happened. We're celebrating the history, and for the remainder of the program, we're going to hear some things about that. But today, I'm going to talk about UROC at age 5. Now, as many of you know, I'm a mom of 4 and a grandmother of 10. Yes, I know I look fabulous for my age. And I just want to mention that I look much better than my ex-husband. Just had to mention. So from the perspective of a mom and a grandma, I mean, I think about UROC and the fact of the spark of the idea that a UROC could happen and the fact that it spent some time in the womb and then it was born and then it went through its toddler stage. And now at age 5, we're where? Kindergarten. And kindergarten is a beautiful age because really everything you need to know in life you learn in kindergarten. That's right. And as we think about that, I've really reflected on where we come from building this as a baby gets developed and built and all the things that come together. And it's the building and it's the physical plant. But it's also the idea of the mission and the vision and where are we and what have we learned in this 5 years. There's been a great focus, at least in the last 3 years since I've been the executive director. Oh yeah, my name's Heidi and I'm the executive director. But when we think about that kind of developmental, what we learn, what we know, who helps us learn, who helps us know what we know, those things have really been on my mind in celebrating today's 5th anniversary. So at least the last 3.5 years, we've spent a great deal talking about, we have this incredible facility. People called it from the community eye-pleasing, something that they're proud to come here, something that when they come and have meetings in this building, I've been in so many meetings where community people and university people alike will say there's something about this building that means we can have these dangerous conversations, that means that we can have these transparent conversations. And I'm always astounded to hear that because I thought, what makes that? And part of it is the beauty of the building. A lot of it's the people who come here. A lot of it's about the people who share the vision of building this partnership with the university and communities to solve urban problems. But a lot of it's also about the vision of UROC, which is to transform the way that we work together, because that is just as important as accomplishing our mission. It's how we accomplish it. So, what did you tell me to do this, right? Oh, there, look at that. This is something that I've spent, the first year this was developed by the staff at UROC through multiple conversations. The first place we started was alignment with the Office of Public Engagement's 10-point plan. And from that 10-point plan, then we created a leadership team that then our work plans then began to align with how are we meeting the goal, the university goals of engagement. That's why we did the alignment with the 10-point plan. And then we said, so what is the mission and vision of UROC and what does that sit on? And it sits at its core in partnership. And how we demonstrate that is through both research and outreach. But those partnerships are central to it. And as we looked at how can we tell people that UROC works, we realized there were 2 ways that we work. There are those faculty, students, and staff who work with UROC and work with urban communities through their own sort of initiated work, through grants they may bring through, the partnerships that they bring through. And the other is UROC also performing work in the 3 areas of the community identified: health and wellness, education, lifelong learning, economic and community development. And in those 3 areas, UROC itself, our staff, our little staff, said we need to be building projects and building models, because the vision is, how do we transform the way that we work together? And that's what the focus has been. And at age 5, through these projects, through both those folks working with us in the building and the projects we have ourselves, we have learned some things. So what have we learned? Transparency, transparency, transparency. Now, I know we say that word a lot, but let me tell you, in every meeting, in everything we do, even when it's not comfortable, even when we have people who say, you can't tell me what to do, they're exactly right, but we want to be transparent. Is what you want to do something that really moves the mission of UROC forward, and this idea of working not in a community, not just for a community, but with the community? Are we transforming ourselves, both community folks and university, in how we're linking those partnerships? Is that what we're doing? And the only way to get to that is to really be willing to put on the table, here's some concerns that we have. So we can show the strength of those vital partnerships in some of the work that we are doing. And if you have a little time after we have this, you might go around the building and see some of these examples. The UROC projects from the staff are back here in room 107. But for example, 2 years ago, we took on the issue of trauma, because we know that trauma continues to be an issue that impacts lives in urban communities in ways. So we can do economic development, but if people are in trauma and can't keep those jobs, what does that mean? We know that we need to do better in the education system, but if people are in trauma, when they go to those schools, what are you going to do? And so we've gathered these folks from faith groups, from researchers from the university, from practitioners and other people to have those hard conversations about who should be talking about this, and how do we talk about mental health in different cultures in the community, and how do researchers and practitioners and families and faith leaders come together and talk about that. So that's one model that we're really trying to demonstrate. How does transparency move us forward? The other is in the Northside Job Creation Team. That model is one in which we're working with a community, a well-respected community leader who has a business background, where we are focused like a laser on, we want jobs in or in proximity to North Minneapolis for the people of North Minneapolis. And to date, I'm going to say this because I forgot to ask the people that know. Where's Bill? Where's James? There's Bill. Almost 350, 400 jobs that have been now created in North Minneapolis. And this is because of this incredible, transparent work of a group of people that was convened through UROC and our community leader, but because they've taken the reins in their strengths, and people from the city and people from the state, people who are doing workforce development, a private citizen, the public schools, all of those people it took to come together and say, what is it that we transparently need to do better? What are the barriers? And of course, with the remarkable research of the Carlson School graduate students. So all of those things that we bring together that we were already doing, but doing it together and doing it with transparency is making a difference. That our groundbreaking, quite frankly, our groundbreaking work nationally on juvenile sex trafficking, and how do we deal with the fact that that's happening in our community to our children. And the report that came out in the fall that was groundbreaking in terms of policy at the state legislature and beyond. Those are the kinds of very difficult, critical, hard conversations that UROC is having, and the models that we are attempting to build so that all of us together can really live into this vision of solving urban problems, but also having this transformation of how we work together. And I can stand up here and say all of that because it's not about me. I get to be the executive director. This is about the people from the community. This is about people from the university. This is about the remarkable UROC staff, who is small but mighty. So please thank them. always like to quote Makeda Zulu Gillespie, who's our Director of Outreach, because one just should at any given time. North is a microcosm of the world. And sometimes, you know, as we strive to be an urban research and outreach engagement center, we are place-based. We are living in the neighborhood of Northside. And it's important for us to always, always, always make sure that we're listening to that. And I think Makeda's right. Things that we learn about this urban neighborhood are things that we can take to other urban neighborhoods, although context will always be important. But for Makeda, she says it this way: look, the goal is we just want people to thrive. At the end of the day, we just want everyone to thrive. And I have to agree with that. So let me go to slide 2, because otherwise I'll talk too long, because I love this place. So let me give you UROC by the numbers, because this helps too. More than 50 university community partnerships involving more than 35 academic programs and 40 community organizations. This is from this last year, just this last year, 2013-14. More than 50 graduate and undergraduate university students employed in work ranging from data collection to literature review. Love to have those students hanging around. Summer's coming up, we're going to have a whole big group of them again. More than 400 participants each year in our critical conversation discussions, which have ranged from trauma recovery to our amazing partnership with the Provost's office that brought in Brian Stephenson to talk about race and the geography of safety. We have more than 2,000 visitors each month that come through this building, and I will have to tell you, our Assistant Executive Director, Wilkie Freeman, this building is this beautiful place that is run incredibly well in a rather challenging situation, because everybody comes to this building who has different needs and different wants and different kinds of issues. And she does a remarkable job. So Wilkie, thank you for that work. And now I've done it. I've called out 2 of the kids, and I don't know if I'm going to say everybody's name. I apologize, staff. In 2014, the work was supported by 8 grants and contracts totaling more than $300,000. I can tell you right now, we're not even to June, and we already have done, we'll be doing more of that. We already have more of that going this year, and more in the bucket, as it were, hoping to get more grants and contracts. I'm hoping, oh gosh, I shouldn't say this out loud, we will more than double that this next year. So yeah, everybody keep their fingers crossed. And if you want more information or details on this, we do have our annual report, our first annual report, which was written about last year. Thank you, Nina Shepard, our Director of Communications, which is the reason we actually had an annual report come out, and all the staff who supported getting that done. So what are we looking for in the next 5 years? We have been working, I would say, really diligently, I have at least, for 3 years trying to figure out, how do we measure this? That's a national discussion around engagement. It's not only what are the metrics, but how do we measure impact? And what are we measuring? Are we measuring partnerships? Are we measuring if communities actually benefit? All of those things. We've been attempting to first just document what we're doing. All of the projects and programs that are actually affiliated with UROC, and we hadn't quite figured that out. And I will say to you, we have a pilot that we'll be doing in June and July that I think we finally figured it out. So in the next year, we're hoping to be able to document to the point of coming to measuring impact and begin that measurement across the work that's happening of how is this benefiting communities. The other is, how do we really work on disseminating with transparency all of the work that is happening that's affiliated with UROC? As you know, researchers, we like to finish the research, have our outcomes, and then do a report on it or to do a publication. We have learned over time, communities want to hear, so how's it going? So where are you now? So what does it mean that you've finished interviewing people? So that's the kind of the other thing that we want to work on with our folks on this. And the last thing I want to say is, the most difficult thing for me as an executive director is to continue the enthusiasm, not because people aren't enthusiastic, but to really funnel, to really direct and focus the enthusiasm about why we're here. Because what we can get wound up in is not feedback, but criticism. So feedback's fabulous. And what I love about being North, and I've said this every time I've spoken, is I really never wonder if you all are happy. And that's perfect. But working with multiple communities, both internal and external, I want to continue to make sure we're listening, we hear what needs to move and change, but that we don't sit in the what we can't do. And so thinking about this, I was reading the other day about Joseph Campbell and his book around myth. And in The Power of Myth, he talks about the hero's call. And across time, as you all know, in all cultures, there have been heroes. I mean, we can talk about Odysseus, we can talk about Luke Skywalker, or we can talk about Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz. All of these are heroes, and we can name more heroes in our mythology. But the important thing for me, in understanding these stories, is that I truly believe the transformation of UROC happens because people become involved who have the hero's call. And what I mean by that is you get this call to look at some critical thing that you know that you can contribute to positively. And then the second thing that happens is you go, oh, well, but I can't do that. You know, that's for heroes. And then the third thing is you finally go, but somebody has to do that, so I'm going to step in. And then if you think about Dorothy and her first hesitant step on the yellow brick road, what happened as she was making that circle? How many people, walked up to her and said, follow the yellow brick road? And then she'd take a few steps and they'd say, follow the yellow brick road. And several people along the way encouraged her to accept that hero's call. That's what I'm hoping that we do. We have so many heroes come into this building. We have so many people who have callings to do this work. And all we need to do is help them take that next step into the hero's call. And according to myth, once we answer that call, there's a battle. To me, the only battle we have to worry about is fearing failure. One thing that I've appreciated about President Kaler since he came to the university is he said we have to stop being risk averse. UROC was a huge risk. And it continues to be a risk. And that's why we need to answer that call and not let the battle, it's not fear of death, it's fear of failure. There is no such thing as long as we are learning and we continue to accept that call. So in the next 5 years, we're going to keep inviting all you heroes to the table. The folks in this building are heroes, the folks from the university and the communities that support it, our staff. Everybody here has this calling, and I truly believe that. And one of the things I wanted to do was say, even heroes need help. So we have inaugurated, starting this fall, our first advisory group. Oops. And this will be our first group, who will help advise UROC into the next 5 years of taking that hero call. And I want you to know these are all heroes of mine, and how much I appreciate their willingness to come and help us move through this journey. So thank you, I appreciate you, and I'm so happy you're here today. I wanted to wait just a moment and say that there's one person that we couldn't do this without. I mentioned that we aligned ourselves immediately with the Office of Public Engagement's 10-point plan. That wasn't just a whim. That's because that 10-point plan really is the vision of the university around engagement. And I want to do a special shout out, not just because he's my boss, because he already gave me my review, but because he's been so instrumental in making sure that my courage stays up and that I'm able to answer my call. So thank you to our, I never remember your title, Associate Vice President for Public Engagement, Andy Furco. Thank you. I used to call Robert President Jones when he was the Associate Vice President. Do you remember that? Yeah. And then I'd have to correct myself. I was just, So it's my pleasure now to introduce the university's Chief Academic Officer and another person that UROC could not do without, and that is our Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost, Karen Hansen.
Thanks very much, Heidi. I am delighted to add my voice to the chorus of those celebrating UROC today and honoring Robert. Others will soon speak to Robert's legacy and detail all that he's accomplished throughout his many years at the University of Minnesota. I was unlucky enough to arrive for only the last year of Robert's tenure at the University of Minnesota, but he welcomed me warmly and helped to show me the ropes with grace and kindness and with expertise deployed tactfully and wisdom worn lightly. Robert was a dream colleague. When I look at the calendar, I'm always, in fact, surprised that it was that short a time. It doesn't seem to me that our overlap was relatively short because our working relationship was so easy and productive and because he made an indelible mark on me, as he's made a mark on so many people and so many elements of our city and our university. I'd like to focus a bit more on one of the most significant of the many accomplishments, his leadership in the creation of UROC. We often speak about the importance of public engagement, and Andy and I speak all the time about the importance of public engagement. It's one of the 3 pillars of the university's mission, after all, and it is underscored in our new strategic plan. But what makes UROC so special is that it sets the standard for a particular model of engagement, one that expands on our land-grant mission and brings it fully into the 21st century, and you've just heard a beautiful account of that. UROC exemplifies our vision of engagement as a constant, productive, and mutually beneficial exchange of ideas between the university and this wonderful community we're here to serve and strengthen as we work to solve the biggest challenges we encounter in the same way we experience them, together. Heidi made reference to the session we had recently with acclaimed attorney and social justice advocate Brian Stevenson. He was on campus and here at UROC last month, and I know inspired so many of us. He spoke about how important it is to be proximate, to get up close and personal with whatever it is you're trying to learn about, with whatever problems you're trying to solve, with the communities with which you're intertwined. Thanks to Robert and his vision for UROC, all our faculty, staff, and students have the privilege of getting proximate here in North Minneapolis. Together, we've done so much at this facility and with these people in these 5 short years. I look forward to seeing what more is possible in the years to come. Thank you. And now, please welcome President Eric Kaler.
Thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, everyone. Regent Beeson, Regent Omari, Regent Devine, President Brunix, and of course, Robert and Lynn. Welcome. Welcome to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues who are here today to celebrate with and for you. I simply can echo Provost Hansen's comments about Robert's contributions to this university, this community, and to UROC. His vision for UROC has led the way to where we are today. And let me add that it is truly a rare occasion, almost unheard of, really, when this university, or really any other university, dedicates a building off its campus and in the heart of a city to honor a respected and historic leader. But then we all know Robert Jones is a rare educator and a nationally known advocate for reciprocal engagement. And so this dedication of this building and this community to honor this man for all he did for the research and outreach engagement sector is not only appropriate, but it's practically required. During his many years at the university as a professor of agronomy and plant genetics, and then as a senior administrator, whether it was here in North Minneapolis or on our system campuses in greater Minnesota, Robert was this university's most productive and effective ambassador. Naming this building in Robert's honor is not only a fitting and loving tribute to him, but also a reflection and confirmation of the university's deep commitment to UROC, the work that's done here, and the relationships and collaborations that Robert and all of you have built here. This ceremony also gives me another opportunity to thank you, Robert, for all you have done, for your groundbreaking scholarship, your terrific leadership, your welcoming of me when I came back to Minnesota, and your remarkable legacy, which runs deep through this University of Minnesota, across the state, and in this neighborhood of North Minneapolis. and for laying the strong foundation for UROC and for this building that will now bear your name. Robert, I thank you so much. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Minneapolis City Council President Barbara Johnson.
Well, thank you so much, President Kaler, and what a privilege and pleasure to be here today to honor Dr. Robert Jones. You know, I see Craig Taylor in the audience, and he is now our head of our Department of Community Planning and Economic Development. And when Mayor Hodges thought of names, she asked me, she said, "Do you know Craig Taylor?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, yes." I said, he and Robert Jones stood up to the slings and arrows of the people who were giving us our opinion, their opinion, Josie, when this idea of this great facility was first brought to our community. And, you know, when I think about the marvelous presence that we have along this important street in our community that opens the door to the young people, to the older people, to all of us, to have this great, wonderful presence of the University of Minnesota right in the heart of our community. I just can't thank you enough. And I see every day in the work that I do at the City Council the input and the help and the assistance that we have because of the great people that work here, the great students that bring their energy and expertise to these problems that we have in our city, and the successes that we have in our city. So I'm so pleased to be here today, and I wanted to give the mayor's regrets, and I'm going to read a proclamation by Mayor Betsy Hodges, and it says, whereas Dr. Robert Jones committed more than 30 years to the University of Minnesota as professor of agronomy and plant genetics, and through many leadership roles, including senior vice president, and whereas Dr. Robert Jones has contributed materially to improving the health of people and communities around the globe through his research at the University of Minnesota on stabilizing grain yields, and whereas Dr. Robert Jones has brought his vision of a 21st century land-grant university's role in serving urban populations to fruition in Minneapolis through the University of Minnesota Urban Research and Outreach Engagement Center, and whereas Dr. Robert Jones, a champion of multiculturalism and egalitarianism, has brought transparency, accountability, and trust to relations between the University of Minnesota and the larger community, and played a crucial role in building the community's understanding of the university. And whereas after a distinguished 30-plus year career at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Jones last year became the 19th president of the State University of New York, Albany, and we lost him from here. That's very sad. Whereas in recognition of his contributions to this community on May 20th, 2015, the University of Minnesota will rename the Urban Research and Outreach Engagement Center, UROC, in Minneapolis for Dr. Robert J. Jones, who led the founding of UROC. Now, therefore, I, Betsy Hodges, and Barb Johnson in her place, Mayor of the City of Minneapolis, do hereby proclaim May 20th, 2015 as Robert J. Jones Day in the City of Minneapolis. And I just want to say one more thing. I want to thank President Brunix for his vision in encouraging this great presence again of this wonderful institution that has meant so much to so many of all of us, and is so important to our state and to our nation, the University of Minnesota. And thank you, President Kaler, for your ongoing support. Thank you.
It's now my great honor to invite to the podium one of the true icons of equity, diversity, justice, and activism in Minnesota, a former university faculty member, a regent emeriti, and perhaps the kindest and sweetest person any of us know, Dr. Josie Johnson.
Thank you. President Kaler, I deeply appreciate that. That's very, very nice. Thank you. It's my honor, friends, and I'm deeply honored to be here. Bill understands this, and so many of you in the audience understand. We're talking about a place that years ago couldn't possibly have been developed into the facility and service it is now. We really have to go back a moment in history. At the time that we were talking about a building, there was so much question in our community about the role of the university and research. At that time, my friends, we were having a lot of issues dealing with our Black children on the North Side. And so when the thought of a University of Minnesota creating a research center, Bob, the fear was that, okay, here is the university coming in to do research on Black children. That was the common belief in our community. I can remember, as well as Ezel and others, the number of times we sat in the basement of the Urban League talking to our community, trying to convince people that that isn't what was being designed. Wasn't a place to study and research Black children. But you'll have to go back in time to remember what was going on at that time. Bobby Joe, you were there. What was going on at that time? And so it took not only all of these nighttime and pleading conversations, but it took a Robert Jones, who the community began to trust. People have to trust you in order to understand what you're trying to do. Robert, with his approach, you know, the scholar that he is, and goodness knows, we know Robert traveled worldwide, South Africa and other places, with his great research and agriculture and the concern about people and their health and living. Robert came to our community as a person who understood the fear that our community had, and he had the language, my friends, to help us listen. Robert was able to convince people that this was not a research to study Black children, that it was a center to bring the skills and resources of the University of Minnesota. We are an institution that is supposed to have skills, information, and resources to solve urban as well as nationwide issues. Robert was able to convince our community that that's what this place would do. The trust that he built, the respect that our community had for him, and his ability to transfer this kind of commitment to people, love of community, attitude about the university's role in being of service to its community. So, Robert, this building needs to be named for you. And we are happy that it is. We're happy you came back with your wonderful family to celebrate this place. And for Lynn to hang in there with all that had to happen during that time. We are honored that you're here. And we are, I think we promise, don't we, that we will continue to trust the work that Heidi and her staff have presented to us today and will continue to remember the trust and respect and role of the university that Robert promised. So we're happy to have you back and to have this building named for you, Robert. And it is my pleasure now to introduce a man who was quite instrumental in the development and helping to soothe the attitude and disposition of our community in an administrative leadership role. It's my honor to introduce to you our Robert Brunix. He was identified officially as president of the University of Minnesota. I, with great deal of respect and love, called him my dean. He was dean of the College of Education when I worked there, so he was always my dean. But today he is president, former president of the University of Minnesota. And he retired, believe it or not, in September. And in his retirement after 45, 35, 50 years, 45, of service at the University of Minnesota, in that time of 45 years, he served as professor, he served as a department head, he served as dean, executive vice president and provost, and president of the University of Minnesota. Today, he and his much better half, we say, Susan Hedstrom, live along the river in downtown Minneapolis. They enjoy their cabin in Gunflint, the Gunflint Trail, and spending time with their family. Bob serves on many community boards. It's inevitable. When people hear the word retirement, they assume you have lots of time and experience, and so they invite you. And Robert has served on the Richard Schultz Family Foundation, the McKnight Foundation Board, the Board of Directors for the Minnesota Historical Society, and the Board of Directors for the Minneapolis Park Board. He and Susan still go to all of the University of Minnesota football the maroon and gold games, and he's still a loyal supporter of the University of Minnesota, and it is my great honor to invite him to come forward.
I must tell you, Dr. Johnson still will always outrank me because I refer to her as my regent and my vice president because she served as a vice president when I was dean and served with great distinction on the university's Board of Regents. I must say, Dr. Johnson, it's a lot easier to go to the football games under President Kaler than it was during my tenure. Let's hope it keeps getting better. Anyway, it's really great to be with you today. This is a very special homecoming for so many of us in this room. And it's really very special to honor my longtime colleague and friend, Robert Jones. Robert and Lynn, it was a sad day when you left for New York to take the mantle of president of the State University of New York at Albany. You are clearly missed in Minnesota, but it's really great to have you come back home for this very special occasion. I want to talk mostly about Robert, the man. And so today, as so many of the other speakers have mentioned, we are naming this great center, the university's Urban Research Outreach Engagement Center, in honor of the man who was, as many people have mentioned before me, the driving force behind its creation, including its name. He insisted that this link between research, outreach, and engagement be a part of the title. That may seem a bit ironic to those of you who know Robert, considering his rural and agricultural roots. Robert comes from a sharecropper's farm in rural Georgia. His parents knew the value of education, and they clearly instilled it in their children. From Fort Valley State to the universities of Georgia, Missouri, and Minnesota, Robert showed tremendous potential and drive. Here at the university, you heard he ran a first-class lab on plant physiology that was largely funded by competitive grants from outside the university. I first met Robert in the mid-1990s. I think when he was working with you, you brought him into your office in central administration, and I think he never really left after that. But anyway, we first got to know each other much better in 1997 when I became provost of the university, and at that time I had the assignment from President Yudof to merge three vice presidential offices, and I can tell you I really needed help. So I must tell you that Robert was my first hire, the first new person I hired in the office as vice provost for faculty development. Since then, he's repeatedly proved to be a leader for all seasons and circumstances at the University of Minnesota. He has more titles than Barnes & Noble for his name. Let me just give you a couple of examples. He served as vice provost for faculty and academic personnel, one of the most central responsibilities of the university. He was vice president for campus life, including student development and multicultural and academic affairs. And finally, he served as senior vice president for the University of Minnesota System's academic programs. Each step of the way, in all of these leadership positions, he clearly left his mark. He never lost sight, though, of his own upbringing and his commitment to education of students from all backgrounds and from all experiences. He helped to transform the University of Minnesota's approach to affordability, especially for low and middle income Minnesota students. He helped reshape the extension service in Minnesota from 87 counties to a regional model that set a national standard for the rest of the country. He was instrumental in launching a new system campus, an innovative public-private approach to education in the health sciences called the University of Minnesota Rochester. And he helped the university build connections in strengthening the state's PK-12 education system through the College Readiness Consortium and many other initiatives. Finally, he helped to articulate and implement the university's award-winning internationalization efforts in our diversity and urban agendas, including the establishment of this great research, outreach, and engagement center here in North Minneapolis. As a university, we recognize the need to partner more significantly and more authentically with people. I'm never very good at turning pages, excuse me. With people in urban communities in order to address together the complex challenges facing us today. This center, as people have mentioned, is both in the community and of the community. It's not a directional center where the university comes out and tries to tell the community how it should run its own affairs. It's a mutually connected enterprise that is trying to lift all the boats and make us a much stronger place to live and work. It's a place where the unique assets and resources of the university and North Minneapolis can be leveraged to serve underserved populations throughout the metropolitan area and across the state, and increasingly beyond the state borders of Minnesota. It is our hope that it was our hope at the time that UROC would become a model for other urban universities and have lasting impact far beyond these walls, and I believe that it has. W.E.B. Du Bois once wrote, "Of all the civil rights for which the world has struggled and fought for 5,000 years, the right to learn is undoubtedly the most fundamental." Promoting access to knowledge and the right to learn have been the great passions of Robert's life. And there are few areas of the university upon which he did not leave a lasting imprint. Thank you, Robert, for your tireless service to this great university and the state of Minnesota. I can think of no more fitting tribute for Robert than to have this center named in his honor as a symbol of his vision, his hard work, his dedication, and his values. I'd like to close with something I shared at Robert's inauguration as president at the University at Albany. The poet Langston Hughes opens his poem, Freedom's Plow, with the following words: when a man starts out with nothing, when a man starts out with his hands empty but clean, when a man starts to build a world, he starts first with himself and the faith that is in his heart. The strength there, the will there to build. I believe these verses capture the man we honor today, a man with faith in his heart and the strength and the will to build. So Robert and Lynn, thank you for inviting Susan and I, along with everyone else, to be a part of this very special moment to honor you. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Richard B. Beeson, who is now chair of the university's Board of Regents. Regent Beeson serves as Executive Vice President for Corporate Development and Government Relations at Sunrise Bank, following 20 years as President and CEO of Sunrise-owned Park Midway Bank in St. Paul. Chairman Beeson is not only a great chair for the university's Board of Regents, but he is a passionate advocate on behalf of connecting the university much more vitally with the needs of communities, not only in the urban center, but across the country. And he was a member of the board who took a hard vote to establish this center. I don't want to say that this was heavy lifting. It was a labor of great love. But it occurred right around 2008. And you all remember that the markets crashed in 2008. So it was an act of great faith on the part of the Board of Regents to say this is important to do and we have to do it now, and we have to probably do it under the most challenging circumstances. So with that, I want to introduce Chairman Richard Beeson.
Well, thank you very much, Bob, and good afternoon, distinguished guests, and Bob and Lynn. It's great to see you. I remember when the building opened 5 years ago, there was great excitement around that event, and when I came in today, I felt really wonderful energy, and that's a sign of a successful building, is that energy. You feel it, and I feel it here today. Well, we're going to make this official. Bob, on behalf of the Board of Regents, I'm happy to be here today to commemorate this 5th year of the Urban Research and Outreach Engagement Center and to recognize former university professor and Senior Vice President Robert Jones. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Jones today, but I'll begin by reading this citation if I could. Robert J. Jones, whereas the following facts have been verified and made known, that you, Dr. Robert J. Jones, began your career as a crop physiologist driven by a deep desire to alleviate hunger and improve the urban condition, that your research on stabilizing grain yields has contributed materially to improving the health of people and communities around the globe, that your skills as an administrator and a visionary leader have left a living legacy of global initiatives, lifelong learning, economic development, and the very foundation for one of our nation's leading public universities. That you hold dear the principle that a 21st century land-grant university must address contemporary urban issues for the common good. And that you brought this belief to fruition at the University of Minnesota Urban Research and Outreach Center, the Robert J. Jones. That sounds good, but more importantly, it's the right thing to do, getting this name. That you champion multiculturalism, student access to success, and the hiring and retention of faculty of color in our colleges and universities. That your natural warmth and straightforwardness have brought transparency, accountability, and trust to relations between the university and this fine community. And that you, Robert J. Jones, have been crucial to building this community's understanding of the university as to who we are, whom we serve, and what we value. So I do hereby proclaim that University of Minnesota Urban Research and Outreach Engagement Center shall henceforth be known as the University of Minnesota Robert J. Jones Urban Research and Outreach Engagement Center. Let's give a congratulations on that. All right. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. All I can say, and you know I'm not one that's ever been lost for words, but all I can say at this juncture is, wow, this is truly amazing. I'd like to thank you all for a very warm welcome to me and my family, and to thank you all for being here today. It is truly good to be back home in Minnesota. And as I said at Bob's building naming a couple of weeks ago, people in Albany get a little upset when they say, well, what are you up to this weekend? I said, I'm going back home to Minnesota. And they say, well, this is your home. And I said, well, lest you forget, 34 and a half years, I have a wife, 3 kids, 2 grandkids, so you tell me where home is. I pretty much have ended that debate. They know that I'm committed to being there, and I really have embraced that community, and it's a tremendous opportunity for me to lead that great university. So it's good to be back home in Minnesota, but especially good to be back in North Minneapolis and at UROC. So I want to thank you, Regent Beeson, and the members of the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota, Regent Emerita Josie Johnson, City Council President Barbara Johnson, and of course my friend and colleague Eric Kaler, President of the University of Minnesota, Provost Hanson, UROC Director Heidi Baraz, and President Emeritus Bob Brunings, my friend and colleague for more than 15 years, who really helped me to advance by putting his trust and confidence in me, and he was never short of projects for me to take on. Sometime I was wondering, folks, did this guy really like me or not? There were no simple chores under Bob's leadership, and so, Bob, I thank you. It was good preparation for what I'm doing now. And to all of the UROC partners here in North Minneapolis and beyond, thank you for taking time out to be here. And to the all-university committee that went through the process of vetting the proposal that was put forth by members of the community, including my dear friend, mentor, and colleague, Dr. Josie Johnson and Bill English and others and folks from the university community. Thank you for having that level of confidence in me. And to all of you that have played a role in bestowing this amazing honor upon me. I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying how grateful my wife, Lynn Hassan Jones, and I are to be here today. And let me just take just a little bit of liberty to say that it was kind of ironic. I was thinking about this as we were sitting here. I met Lynn at about the time we were initiating this conversation about how the university needed to be more responsible and engaged with the community. And I understand the way she tells the story. She Googled me, so she knew everything about me. But it's something interesting. You can't find a darn thing about a doctor, no matter how hard you try. Unless they are on their way to jail, or have been in jail, or litigating. So I came into the relationship pretty much, one-sided, kind of blinded. I didn't know what I was getting into. But what impressed me about her was that she was, not really impressed with my scientific and scholarly credentials. She was more impressed about the work that she was hearing about the university's engagement with this community. So that spoke volumes. Let me move on. We're glad that our extended family, including our oldest, our daughter, let's start with the females first. Our daughter, Tara Hassan, is here. Our oldest, our son, Eric, and his wife, Jill. They're here somewhere. Wave, son. That's my little boy. That's the one that... No, not so much. And of course, our daughter-in-law, Martha Hassan, and is here. Martha's here someplace. Our other son, Anwar Hassan, is here. Our grandson, Malik, who's on his way to Dartmouth, folks. Can you believe that? Just amazing young man who we're all very, very proud of. So Malik, I've already talked to the president of Dartmouth. I have to tell you, I walked up to him at a national meeting and I said, sir, I'm very sorry to do what I hate it when people do it to me. I said, but anyway, my name is Robert Jones. I'm the president of the University at Albany, and I have a grandson coming to your university, and I expect you to look out for me. And he said, what's his name? Took out his pad, wrote his name down, so Malik, you were in serious trouble. Anyway, I better move on here, and our other grandson, McConnell, is here. He's a student at Towson University outside of Baltimore. And last but certainly not least, my sister, who I've tried to convince over the last X number of years that I'm the boss and she has to do what I say. The boss of me, as she calls me. She doesn't call me brother anymore. My sister, Mary Alice, and her husband, the Reverend Dr. Clifford Bruner. We're very pleased. I thank you all for your presence and your unwavering support. It really has meant the world to me. As I said, I'm deeply humbled and deeply honored to see so many friends and families and colleague members here this afternoon. I am profoundly grateful for the lasting friendships and collaboration between this vital community that I lived in for more than 20 years, and this great university that truly was my life and my source of inspiration for more than 34 years. And I think, as many of you know, I arrived at this university more than 37 years ago as a newly minted PhD to start what I considered to be my dream job. As a professor in the agronomy and plant genetics department, I had one goal in mind when I came here in 1978, and that was to be the best professor and the best scientist that I possibly could be. Needless to say, I had no idea. It was not part of my dream. It wasn't even on my bucket list that I would have the opportunity to serve this university as a senior administrator and this community as a resident for more than a decade. You see, I moved here in 1984 to North Minneapolis. I moved here because it was a community I could identify with. And folks, each and every day for the better part of 20 years, I rode from 1935 Washburn Avenue North, a few blocks from here, turned on Penn Avenue, made a left turn here on Plymouth, and I drove by this building each and every day that I went to work for the better part of 20 years. While initially I think there were some amazing things, and this building was starting to meet its potential, but I think most of us would agree that for a better part of that period, this building and this facility was not aligned with what we aspired for this community. So for me, being part of the UROC's legacy, UROC's history, and now legacy, has been a labor of love, and I can truly tell you, amongst the most important work of my entire professional life. I remind you, as several speakers have done, that UROC didn't happen overnight. And God knows it was not easy. It grew out of the university's strategic planning process that took over nearly a decade, over 4 years of conversation with the engagement and dialogue with the community. The university's strategic plan that was framed under Bob's leadership that articulated the university's desire to be a world-class research university. And after we framed that big, bold idea that some people thought wasn't very Minnesotan, you know, Minnesotans don't talk about being the world's top 3 public anything. It's just not what we do. But we had very high aspirational goals for this great university, and it became very clear to us that unless the university started to think and act differently about its role as an urban research university, then we couldn't really reach that strategic and lofty goal of being one of the top 3 public research universities in the world. So, Bob, again, I want to say that I'm eternally grateful for the trust and the confidence you placed in me to lead the university in this new era. And I'm very, very excited about where this university is going, but equally important, where UROC has been and where it's going in the future. So we began our journey to bring UROC to this community, as was said earlier, by convening and having critical conversations and dialogues with the community. We listened to both supporters, we listened to detractors, and those who were suspicious, as Dr. Johnson said, of the university's intention. And I remember vividly, Bob, and perhaps you recall this as well, during one of our many conversations with the community, a guy who I don't think is in this room today, Gary Cunningham, asked what I thought was one of the most fundamental questions. He asked Bob and myself, what is the university's urban agenda? And for the first time, since I'd known this man, he was speechless. In fact, I was speechless. Because I want to unpack that question a bit, because what Gary really wanted to know was whether or not the university had a plan for engaging more effectively with the community. And while it was true that we had hundreds of faculty members working in every urban community in the Twin Cities area, we did not have an institutional strategy or an institutional commitment. And that is fundamentally what Gary was asking us if we were willing to commit to. So we created the University Northside Partnership, convened sessions with members of the community, with university leaders, government leaders, business and the philanthropic sector, to listen, to plan, to adjust, to create a strategy and a planning process that ensured that everyone had a voice and that the partnership was authentic and that the planning reflected a shared vision and a set of beliefs and core principles that would support the development of a new model. It soon became very apparent to me and many others that we didn't need to spend time creating a new model, but simply we needed to extend the historic land grant model that had served the rural parts of this state for more than 150 years. And all we need to do was to be more strategic and intentional about partnering with community to solve complex problems that no single entity could solve alone. So we began with the notion that the University of Minnesota should have the same sense of commitment and sense of urgency to partner with this community to solve complex problems as the level of commitment that we clearly had demonstrated for more than 100 years to solve agricultural and other problems in the rural parts of the state. And this is one of the places where I leveraged the fact that I have an agricultural background. I got a little excited in a couple of those meetings, and I stood up and said, shouldn't the university have as much obligation to close the achievement gap in North Minneapolis as we have to respond to stem rust and wheat rust in the Red River Valley? So soon the notion of the Urban Research Outreach Engraving Center was born as an urban counterpart to those research and outreach centers that exist in every geographical region of the state. And since the name was a mouthful, it affectionately became known as UROC. We obtained the consensus of the community and approval of the Board of Regents to ultimately purchase this building. And then another very impressive partnership came together. This time it involved the architects, the contractors, university community members, community agency, who all coalesced to thoughtfully renovate this facility in form and function. And we also, Mac Denny will tell you, brought it in on time, and Kathleen will tell you as well, and on budget, which Bob insisted upon. And I would be remiss if I didn't make the following statement. No one really achieves much of a significance alone. While there are hundreds of people, many of whom are in this room today, who all played a significant role in advancing the vision, I would be remiss if I didn't mention just a few. So Heidi, I'm going to make the same mistake you made, but I can't sit down without doing this, and I offer my apologies for anyone who feels that they also should have been recognized. But as Heidi said, I think it was Heidi or maybe Josie, I've kind of lost track. There's so much going on in my mind, still trying to get my mind around all this. But I would be really, it would be a mistake for me not to highlight someone who's been my best friend for the better part, almost 25 years now, Craig Taylor, who was with me from the very beginning. Who went with me to that first meeting right across the street at the Urban League when Bill English and Ezell Jones, the Reverend Radnor Staton, and a host of other folks met to have a conversation about how we engage, how we should be engaging with this community. Craig was a tremendous resource because while I had lived in the community for 20 years, my God, you must have been here for 25 or 30. Over on Oliver, wasn't it? And so we both were products of this community. It's not like you had two university administrators coming from outside trying to speak to people about a community they didn't understand. We lived here. We moved here intentionally, and we really valued this community. So Craig was at every meeting. We sometime would, he doesn't drink, so he wasn't a lot of fun in that regard. After some of those meetings, we would have to go someplace, and he'd have to have a chicken sandwich. I mean, it was really a very interesting time period, and Craig was there from the start to the end, and I'd just like to thank him for the innovation that he brought to this building through the community economic development work, the junior entrepreneurship program, the technical assistance work, the computer repair program, all of the things that Craig has done to really make UROC what it is today. So Craig, I thank you. And just a couple other folks, and I'll close. Professor Scott McConnell. I don't know how many of you know Scott. He has a kid that's graduating. I don't think Scott is here. He told me he had a kid graduating, so you bet he's, yeah. But Scott was there with Craig and myself at most of those meetings, and I can tell you, I don't know how many of you know Scott, but he was there. He took a lot of direct criticism and abuse, and he took it in stride, and he stayed focused on the prize and on the broader mission and potential of UROC. Dante Cicchetti was there with us as well, so I know Dante was here earlier. Dante, thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure to see you. And Bill English, Ezell Jones, and I mentioned Gary Cunningham, Sherry Pugh, who was the head of the Northside Residents Redevelopment Council that made the purchase and the transition of this facility possible. Council Chair Johnson, we made many trips to visit you. then Representative Champion, I remember you were a very strong supporter. And Chuck Levine and Alicia Belton, who were the consultants, the architectural consultants that resulted in this beautiful facility. And I just wanted to recognize you as well as County Commissioner Mark Stenglein. I don't know how many meetings I had with Mark, but he really was very, very supportive in helping us to advance this agenda. And the list goes on and on. North Point Health and Wellness was a critical partner, as well as Norway Trust, the Urban League, Phyllis Whitley, and of course, a key partner in all of this, and a lot of folks don't realize this, under Bill's leadership and engagement, the Coalition of Black Churches were absolutely critical. We wouldn't have gotten this done without their support. And so I just want to publicly thank all of you, those that I mentioned and those that I didn't. So I am... Let me just close by saying I'm genuinely proud of the work that we did here together that resulted in the creation of UROC, now celebrating its 5th anniversary here in North Minneapolis. I would, however, be remiss if I also didn't acknowledge the disappointment that many of us felt when we were unable to deliver on part of the catalyst for this whole dialogue and engagement, and that was on Dante Cicchetti's compelling vision to build the Child and Family Center here in North Minneapolis. You know, sometimes we have to celebrate the shortcomings and the failures as well as the victories. That is still a big idea that I hope some way can find its way to be implemented in this critically important community. But notwithstanding that setback, I'm proud that today UROC stands as a testimony, a testament to the vitality and the important and sometimes challenging work that we've done here together to forge this partnership that is based on a common cause, mutual respect, and true reciprocity, and a shared commitment of leveraging all of our resources and strengths to find solutions to complex problems facing urban communities. And I can assure you, based on the time, almost a year and a half, that I had to work under President Kaler's leadership, that the university's commitment to this public mission and to this community is strong and steadfast. Because it's very clear to me that he believes, as I do, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, that North Minneapolis and the University of Minnesota are inextricably linked in an inescapable network of mutuality and tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This is the epitome, folks, of community engagement and community partnership. With UROC as a focal point, we know collaborations will continue to grow and be more responsive to community needs and will result in a significant and sustainable impact in this vital community. Our greatest challenge and our best work, I believe, really lies ahead. And I know that we succeed, and together we will build healthier families and a more vibrant urban community, which is the key to the attainment of economic vitality and prosperity for the North Side, the Twin Cities, and I think the state of Minnesota. And as was said, 2 years ago, I made the bittersweet decision to leave Minnesota after 34 and a half years. I remain excited about having the impact as the president of the State University of New York at Albany, but my ties to Minnesota, both personally and professionally, remain broad and deep. I thank you all for the trust, the friendship, and the confidence that you've given me, and for your ongoing commitment to UROC and to the strong university-community collaboration that improves lives and expands opportunity and strengthens our region and the state. I look forward to continuing to stay in touch as our journey continues, and I want you to know how truly honored I am to have my name affiliated with UROC's journey in the months and in the years ahead. And then in closing, I'd just like to say, I've been trying to tell my oldest son, Eric, that I rock, and now it's true. Thank you very much.
So I want everyone to please enjoy the rest of the day. There's lots of food. I have a small gift for Robert as a remembrance of today, but he's really busy. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I'll give this to him when the line goes down. So please enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you for being here.